What is up? And welcome to a very special edition of the DLF Team Preview Series. We've been having so much fun in this series, talking about every individual team, all the moves that they have made over the course of the offseason, and what we can expect from 2021, the dynasty value, 2021 value, redraft value, Scott Fishbowl value, whatever you guys want to talk about. We're here to talk about it with the Bears. We're going to break it down. As with every other team we've done this with, we invite some smart football people on to do this with. We've got them here, and I'm going to introduce them to you next when we get in and dive into I'm fired up tonight. We got a doubleheader. First, we start with the Bears. We got the Giants later, but we're going to get into the Windy City, Chicago, who made a bunch of waves this offseason. Started off looking like the most exciting thing might be like, oh, we got a year of Andy Dalton, but things got a lot more exciting in the draft. We're going to break all that down. Joining me to talk about it, to my left here, Steven Johnson, Steven Roto. You may have seen his work, even if you don't realize it, all over the internet with some Scott Fish avatars, aviators. I don't know what you call those. Steven, you tell everybody what it is.
Obvious avatars, whatever you want to call them. I had the opportunity to once again do some designs with the SFB Avi makers. Over $6,500 raised for Fantasy Cares this year. Also doing some work with Shy City Sports. So yeah, just living the dream right now and enjoying every minute of it.
And you were involved with the John Bosch Eliminators too, weren't you?
Not too much. No.
Okay.
I got involved with John to do some more shirts for SFB. So creating some designs there, but yeah, that's about the limits of my abilities so far this year.
Love it. And as always, like if you are joining us in the chat, you saw a couple things come through. Let us know you're here. Say hi. It always means a lot when you do. And if you have any questions about the Bears, we definitely are here to take those as well. Roberto, my main man, the last time we did this, I called you a former Viper, and I meant you're a fellow Viper with the Dynasty Vipers who, I'm over there on the Viper cast, and you do a lot of work for them. Really, really good dude, criminally underfollowed, but everybody needs to get to know Roberto. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Yeah, so obviously there's my Twitter handle at rs_smooth, and just helping out the Vipers when I can. We're getting a great team together over there, dishing out content daily. So please, if you haven't subscribed, go out there, subscribe to our Twitter, YouTube channel, everything. We got some great stuff coming your way. So
I had some life things come up and wasn't able to do the Lion show with Chris, Detroit BC yesterday. We're going to make it up and we're going to reschedule something because he is awesome. And we're going to talk about the Lions, the other part of this amazing AFC North division with a lot of intrigue over all through basically every team, except for the boring Vikings. Nobody needs to talk about those. But let's talk about the Bears because with all the moves, it might even be hard to answer this question. But let's start off with just kind of reviewing the offseason. Steven, from your perspective, what was the best move that the Bears made all summer?
I mean, I don't see any way you can't say it's drafting Justin Fields. I mean, you changed the course of the franchise after how far the Mitchell Trubisky pick set back the franchise and realizing he wasn't the answer, moving up from 3 to 2 and everything that happened in the 4 years that he was in Chicago. It's sparked that interest yet again. And you imagine what this town could be like without a quarterback drafted in the first round. The hype would be nowhere near what it is now. And again, it's just completely reset where this franchise is going. Even if they don't have a first round pick next year, it's well worth it.
100%. Dave, for you, I guess it was Andy Dalton being signed there, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, there literally isn't. Steven hit it. That's the only good move that they've made this offseason. We could sit here and talk about 20 different head-scratching moves, but genuinely, like I was trying to think like of something besides Justin Fields that I could talk about that was a good move they made this offseason, and I stared at my computer for about 5 minutes, and I gave up. And I said, let's just move on to the head-scratches because there are a lot of those, but hopefully Justin Fields can just throw this team on his back and take us to the Super Bowl because outside of the defense, that's been a pretty strong unit for the last few years now. There isn't much else to get excited about on this team.
Yeah, looking through the list, I mean, like, you guys are right. There's not a lot to choose from, but are we going to make it a clean sweep and talk about Justin Fields here, Roberto?
Yes, it's going to be a clean sweep. How is that? I mean, really, man. I mean, like I think Steven said, right? It reset everything for Bears fans. I mean, I was after this when the off season came. I mean, when they were making some runs at some certain quarterbacks, the Russell Wilson stuff, you kind of knew, just had a feeling that wasn't going to happen. And then when they signed Andy Dalton, it just, I don't know. I mean, it just really had me down as a fan. And the Fields thing just reset everything. My interest came back. I mean, I was super pumped. I mean, this kid now, it doesn't really even matter. Like, now I'm just excited. It's like Andy Dalton, who cares? He starts this year. I really don't, it doesn't matter. Justin Fields gets 2 games. I just know we know it at least now going forward. We have a legit shot at a franchise type QB. So it just changes everything. That's by far the most important move this offseason.
It felt like a shot of adrenaline in the arm, right? I mean, like, that's kind of the sense that I got from I'm in some group threads with you guys, and it just feels like it was like a, gosh, this is going to be another boring season. We were expecting Matt Nagy to be gone, and all of a sudden it was like, boom, okay, now Matt Nagy might be kind of interesting with Justin Fields. So talk about that. Like, what do you guys expect from him? Like, I know, Steven, I'll start with you because I think last time we were kind of wondering if he was going to even keep his job, right? I mean, like, that was kind of where we were on the expectations for the offseason. What do you think now? I mean, like, there's a lot of people that believe he's a really smart offensive coordinator and can do well with someone like Justin Fields.
Yeah, that's the big question. Unfortunately, for those people that are expecting Matt Nagy to get Das Boot from Chicago, I have a feeling that this move saved him at least 2 years in Chicago. And it's been really weird because the Bears have been very quiet about the contracts for both Matt Nagy and Ryan Pace and just how long they actually are. So it's kind of that unknown right now. But given the fact you don't necessarily want to take this potential franchise quarterback, or for all 2021 purposes, treating him as such and hoping he grows into a fantastic player, I mean, you got to have him in place and not be switching coaches every single year. We saw that with Jay Cutler when he was here. How many offensive coordinators and quarterback coaches did he go through when he was in Chicago? You need that stability. So I think that move has definitely given Matt Nagy a longer leash, whether or not Bears fans like it or not.
You guys agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with Steven very much. And it seems like, everybody's trying to pin the problems on either the quarterback play, on Matt Nagy, or Ryan Pace. And I think that Steven and I kind of agree here that I think it was the quarterback play. Even with not so great play from whoever it's been, Mitchell Trubisky, Chase Daniel, Nick Foles, it doesn't really matter. It's been bad quarterback play everywhere. But what you see when you watch this team are wide receivers getting open. And as great as Allen Robinson is, Mitchell Trubisky would just get fixated on throwing the ball to him. He'd drop back, he'd stare at him, and he'd try to squeeze it into a tight window. And it was frustrating when you would see the tight ends getting wide open. You'd see Darnell Mooney blowing the top off the defense, and nobody was able to get them the ball. So I still have faith in Matt Nagy. Despite this terrible QB play, he still has been 28-20 as a brand new head coach with 2 playoff appearances. So when people were saying that he's sitting on the hot seat, talking about firing Matt Nagy, I couldn't believe that, because this is a brand new coach that's only been doing this for 3 years, has a winning record, and has shown success. I don't know what more Bears wanted from him. He came into a team that already had Mitch Trubisky. That wasn't his guy that he picked out. That was the John Fox era when Trubisky was brought in. So he had to play with the cards that were dealt to him. And now I think getting his guy in Justin Fields is going to give us an opportunity to see what he can really do. So I'm very excited to see what Matt Nagy can do next year.
What about you, Roberto? You like the combination of Fields and Nagy?
Well, I like the combo, yeah. I mean, more because I like Fields, right?
Yeah.
I'm not all in on Matt Nagy, but I haven't lost complete faith. Exactly how Steve and Dave were kind of saying. A lot of it was tied to the QB play, right? I think it was that running joke with Matt Nagy. Like, every year, his play sheet was getting smaller and smaller. Like, it just looked like, to me, like a couple years ago, it was like a Madden play sheet. You had 2 run plays and 2 pass plays, and that's all you were calling. So I just want to see him with his guy. Justin Fields, he picked this guy. He's been scouting him for a couple years now. Was a fan last year. So You got your guy. I've questioned him. I like his play calling, but there's been questions about certain plays that I can bring back and get angry about and frustrated about. But I think a lot of it was tied to the QB play that he had. So I do want to see him with what we would deem as a real quarterback who can make real NFL plays, NFL passes. Foles and Trubisky were not it last year, and Trubisky wasn't it before that. So yeah, I'm excited.
So we are going to get some predictions at the end of this on what the record would be. But Bob asked, are the Bears fans expecting playoffs or another high pick? Like, I don't think the Bears have ever had a season where they weren't expecting the playoffs in some way. I don't see the Bears fans, like, they're realistic, but only to a degree, right? Even if Mitch Trubisky was here, you'd still be thinking playoffs. They made it last year.
I mean, the highest pick we've had in recent history was 7. When we had Trubisky, we traded up for it. I mean, the Bears have always kind of been in that, like, 7's like the highest, the lowest they are is like the mid 20s. They never really get that high pick. They're kind of stuck in that purgatory where you're not getting a good game. And that's why I'm so happy that, just the stars aligned where Justin Fields dropped for whatever reason. I'm thinking that somebody from the Bears camp might have been chirping in Adam Schefter's ear on draft day, saying that Aaron Rodgers wanted this trade, knowing that everybody was hoping that they'd be in the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. I mean, just the stars kind of aligned for that to work out perfectly. But, they should have been picking, what was it, 20th, 22nd? They had to move all the way up to get Fields this year.
So they wouldn't even be taking, be having a high pick next season anyway, right? I mean, like, they've already traded that pick away.
We want it as low the first as humanly possible.
Yeah. So not everything was sunshine and rainbows. Like, Justin Fields makes everything look better, but there might have been some head scratching moves that were made over the offseason. And Dave, I'll start with you because I've seen, watching your Twitter, I know of one that comes to mind specifically. We haven't talked about it, but what do you think was the most head scratching move of the offseason for the Bears?
Now, this is a 3-hour show, right? And this is the segment that's going to take up the majority of it. No, I mean, the one that I'm going to talk about, and this one is just absolutely infuriating to me, is cutting Kyle Fuller. That made no sense to me. Yeah. That was just such a kick to the shin. I still can't believe it happened. Like, when you're looking at this before they started cutting and all that, it just assumed that Jimmy Graham was going to be the guy. You saw the change of guard happen right before the bye week last year, where Cole Kmet took over as the team's tight end one. And, Jimmy Graham, they could have saved, what was it, $6.5 million, I believe, by cutting him this year. And rather than letting him walk, they bring him back and then cut their all-pro cornerback, which is their biggest weakness. So I love Jalen Johnson, who they drafted last year. I think he was a steal late in the draft. He had a phenomenal rookie season. And I think that as a secondary cornerback, he would have been great. But now we see Jalen Johnson heading into year 2, and he's going to have to pick up Justin Jefferson and Devontae Adams. And that really, really worries me. So it seems like they're almost going for the quantity over quality approach when it comes to their D-backs. They've got this strong pass rush. They've got some great linebackers. But I worry a little bit that it's going to be a second-year guy in Jalen Johnson, and then I don't even know who the number 2 is going to be. Is it going to be Otto Graham, who they just drafted in the 5th or 6th round? I mean, it's a pretty sketchy situation for the defensive backs.
I think he's 85 years old now, isn't he, Otto Graham? Like, is that really his name? I didn't even see that. That's interesting. Roberto, what do you think? Head scratching move of the offseason. Do you agree there? The combo of Fuller and Graham is the one that I've heard you mention the most, Dave.
Yeah, for me, it was, at first it was obviously Andy Dalton. I just hated that signing. I was like, oh, here we go again. But it's easily Kyle Fuller. I mean, they just, you gave him away. It's an all-pro corner. Like you said, I'm a big fan of Jalen Johnson. Think he can be a good corner in this league, but he's only going into his 2nd year. And now we want him guarding all the number ones, and you just give away your all-pro corner. Oh my God, I don't get that move at all. It made no sense. Still doesn't make sense.
What up, Joey? Appreciate you being in here in the chat. Steven, how about you?
Yeah, I'm just going to round it out and make this really easy. It has to be the Kyle Fuller situation. And the fact that, not only did they let him go, but they did for a day try and backtrack and say, okay, well, we're not going to cut him yet. But, once you show your card, everybody knows what you're going to do. And at that point, it was, okay, we're going to cut you. And 24 hours later, he is on the Denver Broncos. Just everything from A to Z with how the Bears handled that situation you had to give it an F- for as terrible as it was. And now you're sitting here with Artie Burns, Duke Shelley, Kindle Vildor, Desmond Trufant, Trey Roberson from the Canadian Football League as these guys that need to fill in behind Jalen Johnson. And
it was Thomas Graham, not Otto Graham, by the way. I hope somebody caught that.
we have
sure maybe
that's
a nickname. Yeah, maybe. There you go.
But I mean, I echo what Dave said in terms of, Jalen did show a lot of promise last year, but the big issue with him, and this is even coming out in the draft, was staying healthy, something he has never been able to do. And the fact that you're literally building a house of cards against one of the more formidable wide receiver groups when you bunch divisions together, it makes no sense whatsoever why you would do this. And especially looking at their schedule as a whole for 2021, they have a very difficult wide receiver schedule coming up. And it would not shock me if that does become the Bears' Achilles heel in 2021.
So many good questions coming in from the chat here. Our guy Matty Daddy. This was a move that I was kind of thinking was going to happen. I think even Steven, me, you, and Roberto were expecting that Anthony Miller could get traded. But he asked what went wrong with Anthony Miller. Had potential first coming out of Memphis. Ashley also says she's loving the team breakdowns. Thank you, Ashley. But will Daz Newsome push Anthony Miller out? Obviously, we know, and we're going to talk about the top two options in the receiving room. But Anthony Miller, Daz Newsome, some of these wide receivers down there. I don't know if it's okay to bring up Javon Wims on a Bears show. I don't know if you've recovered from that yet, guys, or not. But how about the options right after the top two? Dave, start with you.
I mean, I am, I'm going to try to be nice here because Anthony Miller is a professional and he's in the NFL and this is his livelihood and he's put a lot into this, but he is just not a good wide receiver. And when everyone was saying, the Bears are going to try to trade Anthony Miller, the first thing that popped into my head is, who the heck wants him? Like, have you seen this guy play? Who wants Anthony Miller? He, I think he got by with some athleticism as a rookie, but the team, literally, they did like team superlatives, and he was the laziest person on the team. And you see it. They say that he shows up late to practice. He's just not putting in full effort, and you see that translate to his play on the field. You want to see everyone pegged him as the guy that was going to take that big year two leap after a somewhat decent rookie season. And he has just gotten worse. You can say year by year, but it's almost like week by week. You see this guy come out, and he just looks like a worse receiver every single week. So, really frustrating to see that. I don't know who's going to be able to step up as the number 3. Riley Ridley is somebody who you get excited about just because of his brother. But, Javon Wims, he's a guy that you don't want to rely on as a number 3 option either. So I think one of the reasons that they kept that they kept Jimmy Graham there, I think that you're going to see a pretty heavy helping of both Cole Kmet and Jimmy Graham because of how shallow that wide receiver pool is. So I'd expect to see both of those guys utilized in the pass game this year.
Roberto, I don't remember if you were bullish on Anthony Miller or not. There did seem like, I guess to take the other side a little bit from what, and I think Dave's 100% right, but take the other side, Anthony Miller did seem to, when they were down and they were in garbage time, it seemed like when they were opening things up, he might could win out of the slot. Is there you have any hope for him as a pro and potential fantasy option in the future for some team?
Last year I lost hope. I was high on him his first year. Thought he can do something. He had speed. It looked athletic ability. He wasn't the greatest route runner, but that's something that you figured he can learn. Last year, just the last couple of years. Last year, I think we had done a show before, and I had mentioned how the coaching staff, and even as you're watching the game, it just seems like it's in between the head with him, right? Running wrong routes. He never, and they've just brought it up about being lazy, not showing up to practice, whatever it is, or not putting in all the work. It shows on the field. It's bad quarterback play, but I don't know how many times I saw a communication issue between him and his quarterback. And then lazy drops, just a lack of concentration. So I don't, if you haven't figured that out yet, I don't see how you figure it out going forward. I think eventually it would have to be on another team. I don't see it happening here in a Bears uniform.
Local liability. Appreciate you tuning in. Steven, does Anthony Miller have any dynasty value at this point?
No. He is going to be your bargain barrel for the start of the season, and the guy you just pray that turns around and does something. I know that a couple of us in here are a part of a 20-man dynasty league with like 25 rounds, and I think we're getting to the point in like the 30th round or the 22nd, 23rd round where Anthony Miller might actually be an option.
I was going to say, is he still there? Because I think we've had like, I don't know, 500 players taken in that league or something.
Yeah, exactly. It's upsetting though. I mean, really, the cherry on top when he gets ejected from the Saints game for punching C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which was just like the what are you doing moment. Between him and Javon Wims, it just feels like a lot of wasted potential, and it doesn't really leave a whole lot of hope for the back end of this roster outside of Mooney and Allen Robinson. I mean, the guys that, if anyone is probably going to step up, Dave mentioned keeping Jimmy Graham around just because they need guys that can just catch the ball. A guy that I think might jump into that role that we saw Anthony Miller try to take over there in the slot last year is Damiere Byrd. They signed him from the New England Patriots and put together a pretty decent season for them last year. Honestly, it would not shock me if he becomes, that type of player that the Bears are looking for that Anthony Miller has never been able to put together.
Let's stay with the fantasy theme there, and let's talk about who on this Bears team, Roberto, let's go over to you. Who do you think on this Bears team is not getting the respect that they deserve for fantasy football right now?
I don't really think there's one that stands out completely, but I think that you got people that are split on him right now, but I'm expecting something big from Darnell Mooney. Like, I really feel, I loved what I saw last year. You don't even understand the amount of big plays that were missed last year where this guy was wide open and these quarterbacks just could not get him the ball. I felt for the guy. I'm not no receiver, but I was in tears sometimes watching the game, and I'm like, he has to go into the locker room and just be losing his mind. But he lost out on so many stats, big time stats. And I believe Justin Fields gets an opportunity with his deep ball accuracy and Darnell Mooney. I really think that could be a nice connection. So he's the one that I feel like maybe ain't getting all the attention right now, but I really feel like he could take a big leap forward here in year 2.
I'm going to be really honest right now. When you first said that, I was like, no way, Mooney gets talked about too much. I just looked up, like, you're 100% right. He's going as the wide receiver 53 in DLF's ADP. He's going after, Marquise Brown and Jarvis Landry. This is Dynasty. Like, there's no way in Dynasty he should be going after, so many of those guys. Steven, what do you think? Like, obviously, Darnell Mooney definitely jumps out now. Is there another name that you think about?
That definitely is a name that I feel does not get the recognition. I think he's going to turn a lot of heads with more accurate quarterback play in 2021, as long as that does end up happening. I'm going to go kind of an unconventional route because some people might agree he's right where he needs to be, but I'm in the ballpark of believing that he needs to be a little bit higher than he needs to be, and that's Allen Robinson. Currently, that 12 to 14 range is where he's at among wide receivers, and you think back to the fact that the best quarterback that Allen Robinson has ever played with is Blake Bortles, probably. And for what he's been able to put together with the shoddy quarterback play, both in Jacksonville and in Chicago, the fact that there might actually be that stability on the horizon, he should be a top 10 guy in my mind, just with what he can do on the field and make the most of what is given to him. So honestly, I see him as a value that, you can get a guy that can put up a much better statistical package by the end of the year versus some of these guys that are going in that 7 to 10 range.
Dave, what do you think?
I agree with both of you guys on that. And the guy that I'm going to point out right now is somebody who had a hype train that might have been getting a little bit carried away earlier in the offseason. And then everybody is forgetting about him now. But Cole Kmet is still a very good, capable tight end. And it seems like now, because Jimmy Graham is returning, everybody has just gotten completely off the Cole Kmet bandwagon. And, he's kind of falling into that like dynasty stash spot. But realistically, I think that he still has an opportunity to perform as a second-year guy in 2021. I kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but we saw him take over. It was right before the bye week. He saw 70% of the snaps in that week. And then from there out, 79%, 78%, 85%, 100%, 90%, 89%. They were making him, an every down player. And that was still while they had Jimmy Graham there. So I think because of the lack of wide receivers there, we can still see Cole Kmet make an impact this year alone. And I get it. He's not the most athletic guy, and he's more of a complete tight end that's going to play in line a little bit and do some blocking. But when you saw him last year, there aren't many rookie tight ends that you see just just snap and figure it out. And he did. And he looked like a veteran out there. He was throwing bodies around. He was picking up all of his assignments. He's a crisp route runner. I don't know if he's ever going to have, that top potential like George Kittle or Darren Waller, where he's going to be able to rip off giant plays and rack up yards after the catch. But I think that he could end up being third on the team in targets this year, which that alone should make him pretty desirable.
Roberto mentioned Mooney here, so I'll throw that back out. PJ Kennedy, Fields to Mooney is going to be awesome. Local liability jump back in and traded Jimmy G in a 5th for Mooney, and then post draft traded Big Ben in a 6th to the same owner for Jimmy G. That's obviously a dynasty league, which is pretty good. And Aaron, 1984, really good question here. I think how do I approach A-Rob in dynasty? Because you guys are 100% right about where he is. Certainly when I'm thinking about in terms of redraft, but he's wide receiver 16 right now. He is 27. There are some concerns potentially for him in dynasty and whether or not he's going to, he's approaching that age cliff where you never quite get the value. You're kind of buying him for the rest of his career. And as Aaron says here, he's great. I love him. The tooth is getting longer by the day. Contending in a 12-team 2 QB league. Are there any trade targets? Would you be looking to trade him away as a contender? Dave, start with you.
Absolutely not. No, I think that his best is yet to come. I'm trying to look it up right now, but I've got the stats somewhere of DeAndre Hopkins, and I know people might think it's crazy to even mention DeAndre Hopkins and Allen Robinson in the same sentence. But what DeAndre Hopkins had to deal with early in his career was terrible quarterback play. It was Ryan Fitzpatrick and Brock Osweiler, and I can't even go through the list of guys that he had to play with. And during that time, he was putting up low-end wide receiver 1 numbers consistently. And then once he got Deshaun Watson, that's when we saw DeAndre Hopkins become the player that we know DeAndre Hopkins is today, which is one of the best wide receivers in the league. I think from a pure talent standpoint, Allen Robinson is just behind DeAndre Hopkins. I truly believe that he is that good. And DeAndre Hopkins went from averaging around 1,000 yards a season with those other quarterbacks. Since he's had DeAndre Hopkins and Kyler Murray, he's averaging 1,400 yards a season. He went from 7 touchdowns to 13 touchdowns per season. So we saw it really elevate his play. And that happened around age 26. So now Allen Robinson is around that same age. We know that wide receivers hit their prime between 27 and 29. So sure, you might only get another year or 2 left of Allen Robinson, but I think that his best days are still ahead of him. He's got back-to-back years with over 150 targets. I don't think those targets are going anywhere because of the shallowness of the wide receiver pool. So I think we can see, even though he already had a 1,400-yard, 14-touchdown season with Blake Bortles, I think that we can still see him have a career year. And then another thing is he missed an entire year due to an ACL injury. So even though he's 27 years old, he doesn't have a year of hits on his body. So I think he's still got, 2 or 3 more elite years that could be even better than what we've seen previously.
I'd love to see him settle in with Justin Fields and really get into a good groove with the quarterback. That is just something we haven't seen from him ever. I agree with you. I don't think I'm selling him, especially if I'm a contender. But Steven, what do you think? If you have him, and let's say you are on a team that maybe he's your best asset, and you're not competing for a couple of years. Is there some trade combination in mind that you can think of?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a mid first and a second rounder, I'd probably let him go for. But I think, Dave kind of hit the nail on the head just in terms of that comparison to DeAndre Hopkins. Is, you talk about the age thing. I mean, DeAndre's in the top 30 in startup ADP right now for Dynasty, and he's 2 years older than Allen Robinson. So, honestly, you hit the nail on the head there, Dave. But yeah, I mean, I definitely be looking for a first rounder plus, definitely that middle of the pack first rounder, with some plus to even consider it, given the fact that, yeah, there is some unknown because he's under this franchise tag, but he's more or less going to have whoever he wants to play for coming to him if he does indeed hit free agency next year and say, I want to play with that quarterback. I want to play with somebody I know can get me the ball, versus if he does stay in Chicago and he does be Justin Fields' guy. I mean, everything is looking up for him. So yeah, it'd be a tough sell though for everything, putting it into what your future may hold, and if you can turn it around after a year and start competing again.
I think the important word you said there is if. And Roberto, I'm curious, with him being on the franchise tag, like, are you hearing anything? Like, what do you expect him to be there next year? Like, is there anything that any insight from local Chicago news or anything that you've consumed that tells you whether you think he's going to be there or not?
I mean, we can't even find out what the contract situation is with Nagy and Pace. So we're getting no indications on how this is going with Allen Robinson. I mean, he's interviewed a few times and said it hasn't been going anywhere yet. So he's going to play on the tag and see what happens. I will say, I mean, if there's one guy that deserves some good QB play, man, it's A-Rob. I mean, the numbers he's put up with his QB play, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, this is a top-end wide receiver. And, yeah, I think in Dynasty, if you're competing, I wouldn't sell him. Like Dave was saying to me, he's in his prime window, right? This is when you're going to get the best out of him. If he even gets any type of improvement, getting Justin Fields as a core, getting any type of improvement from the QB play, who knows where his numbers can go. I'm never big, like with a guy like A-Rob, I'm never that concerned. He probably doesn't get the respect he deserves as a route runner. I think he's a heck of a route runner. He's a big physical guy. So he doesn't depend on the speed per se. So I don't really think he's gonna like just have an age cliff where it just falls off completely. I think he'll tail off nicely. So if you're not competing, then yeah, this is your window to try to sell him to a competing team. But if you're competing, man, you hold on and you enjoy that ride.
Yeah, something I want to mention too. You're talking about how we don't know how the contract negotiations are going. The one thing that I think could have possibly soured any sort of long-term contract is the fact that, while they're out here giving Allen Robinson the franchise tag, they're also out whining and dining Kenny Galladay and put an $80 million offer on the table for Kenny Galladay. So just put myself in Allen Robinson's shoes. He's done everything. He hasn't complained. He's been, just a consummate professional going out there and playing every single week. And he clearly wanted the long-term deal, and he would have taken that last offseason. And instead, they slapped him with a franchise tag, which he didn't want. He was hesitant to even sign. And then while that's happening, then they're taking Kenny Galladay out to a steak dinner and offering him $80 million. So that's just got to be such a slap in the face to Allen Robinson. And I'm worried that might have ruined any chance of a long-term deal.
Yeah, and I think there might have even been some mentions from Allen Robinson and his agent saying, yeah, they slapped me with the tag, but there's been no conversation since then. And I mean, even then, I mean, you have that window. I don't understand why you would waste that window. But again, like we kind of talked about the gaffes that the Bears have had this offseason, we watched Ryan Pace brutally butcher the Kyle Fuller situation. What's keeping him from doing the same to Allen Robinson?
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and in fact, among the thing, we'll go ahead and talk about it now. But the rumors that are out there, that's one of the ones that there's not a ton of things that are out there. Maybe they'll trade Nick Foles. I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know who's buying Nick Foles right now, but maybe Anthony Miller being on the roster bubble. But that was the other thing that jumped out is the news that it sounds like he was pretty frustrated with the way they handled the offseason. So Steven, I know you're pretty connected there, and you have a lot of you have a show that you do about the Bears. Like, is that something that a lot of Bears fans are frustrated with right now? Is the way that they are handling some of these star players?
Yeah, I definitely say that's one of the biggest issues, because it's honestly left a lot of unknown just around what this team is going to look like next year, let alone 5 years in the future. You look at what this defense has been for the Bears over the last couple of years, and the fact that, for lack of a better phrase, they have wasted this defense for what it is and what it can be. And even you think about all the pieces that they've lost this offseason between Kyle Fuller, the special teams game is probably going to be weaker than it was a year ago because Cordero Patterson is now gone and down in Atlanta. It's got a lot of question marks to just what exactly goes on at Hallis Hall. And you're just kind of left shrugging your shoulders and hoping that there's some good that comes out of this at some point. But really, again, outside of Justin Fields, there hasn't been a lot of good. Besides that, thank goodness cutting Charles Leno Jr. and, shoring up the offensive line with some young draft picks, which they have not done in a very, very long time.
Dave, the other, rumor or news item that I wanted to toss out to you guys is basically, I'll ask it this way. Who starts for this team in week 1?
I still think it's going to be Andy Dalton. Kind of my what I've been saying, and anyone that's watched me on shows talking about the Bears has probably heard this before. But I think that week 4 is going to be the first time that we see Justin Fields take the field in Soldier Field. How many times can I say field in a single sentence? But really, what I expect is that Andy Dalton's going to go out. I don't want to see Justin Fields get his first start on the road against Aaron Donald.
Yeah.
In a primetime game. That scares me a little bit. That's a really quick way to ruin a young quarterback's confidence. So I think that you just, as bad as it sounds, throw Andy Dalton to the Wolves, make him the sacrificial lamb out there. Let him play week 1, give him his chance to get his revenge game, in Cincinnati week 2. Week 3 is on the road against Cleveland. And then I think that what they do is they just set the stage for Justin Fields to take over week 4 against what should be an absolutely abysmal Lions team. And hopefully they can just go out there, get an easy win, and get the juices flowing for Justin Fields.
Same timeline you were thinking, Roberto?
Pretty much. I mean, what I would say is my belief is that it's going to probably be Andy Dalton. But if they truly leave it up to a competition, which they're saying right now, that's not going to be the deal, right? But I think if training camp rolls around and it's obvious, like that Fields is just a lot better. I mean, you almost got to owe it. You owe it to your team, and these, it's an aging defense, right? We got some veterans on that squad, and they're going to see what everybody else is seeing. So I think you owe it to them to put the best quarterback out there, right? I think that's the only way, is that he just outclasses Dalton from day one in training camp all the way through camp, and then they just have to announce him as a starter. But I think if it's at all anywhere near close, I do think that Dalton will start, and I think Fields comes in, maybe week 3, week 4, week 5, something like that.
We skipped over a question about the hype train getting carried away and things like that. We've talked about a lot of the players with the Bears so far. But one we haven't talked about that I'll talk about. I don't think the hype train is getting carried away, but it could, depending on how you feel about his last 6 games, and that's David Montgomery. So, Steven, let's talk about what you expect with him. Can he be a full-time workhorse? Is the return of Tariq Cohen, is that scary? What do you think about the backfield there? And Damian Williams, also add to the mix.
Yeah, can he be? Yes. Will he be? No. That's more or less where my mind is at. Like you mentioned, Tariq Cohen being back and then Damian Williams coming to Chicago. He's not just going to sit on the bench. I mean, this is a guy that is a seasoned vet that has proved he can run the ball in prime time on the biggest stage of them all and done well for his team. And there's going to be some siphoning of the carries that we saw David Montgomery get towards the end of last season, where he blew up and had a top 5 running back season. But the other flip side of that, too, that a lot of people just need to keep in mind is just how atrocious the back end of that 2020 season was in the run defenses that they faced. This is a much more difficult schedule for the Bears in terms of run defenses that they're going up against. And it's going to hit David Montgomery in the mouth, regardless of how good he may be, and regardless of how they get that offensive line put together, and if they can gel as well as they did at the end of last season. There's going to be some regression. I think keeping this mindset of feeling like he's going to be able to carry over what he finished last year as, it's a pipe dream. In all honesty, I feel like it's a pipe dream, but he'll still offer you, I'd say, some low-end RB2 value overall over the course of a season.
Dave, to that point, those last 6 games, he scored anywhere between 24.5 to right at 30 PPR fantasy points. But the defensive rank at giving up fantasy points was 28th, 31st, 32nd, 27th, 30th, and 28th. What do you think?
Oh, I saw all those 3 numbers on my ESPN app. I saw it. And I was trying to trade for him because I knew it was happening, man. But the other thing is, before that, when Tariq Cohen was healthy, before Tariq Cohen went down with an injury, David Montgomery was the RB25. And I think that's kind of what you've got to expect for him, is low-end RB2 numbers. So, I agree with everything Steven said. I don't even have anything to add about David Montgomery. What I do want to say, though, because you were kind of talking about, players where there might be a bit of a hype train that's getting out of control.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that guy is Tariq Cohen. Tariq Cohen, he had that one season where I forget if it was 2018 or 2019, but he had one season where he was a very serviceable fantasy back. And I think people are still hanging on to that. They think that, he could be a James White. He can be a Nyheim Hines. And he's not. The hits have piled up on Tariq Cohen, and he's a different player than he was when he came into the league. He used to, he had the nickname the human joystick, and he was out there just juking defenders and making plays in the open field. And he still tries to do that, but now he's lost a step. So when he gets the ball in his hand, what you see are some electric plays, but it'll be him running 30, 40 yards east and west and just cutting back and forth. And at the end of the day, picking up 2 or 3 yards on it. So, everybody still gets really excited about Tariq Cohen, but that's somebody that I'd pump the brakes on. I think that he's going to cut into David Montgomery's workload, but I don't think that he's going to have a lot of standalone value himself.
Roberto, what do you think about the backfield? Like, what are you expecting? Are you more optimistic about what Montgomery can be? It's interesting. We got Bears fans here that are pessimistic, and I feel like his value right now is pretty high. He's been going pretty high in these Scott Fishbowl drafts, and higher than I wanted to take him for sure. So it's interesting to hear you guys say that. Roberto, are you going to give the other side of this?
No, I mean, I've had him as an RB2. I mean, that's kind of where I still have him. My concern, too, I'm not really as high on Cohen. And coming back, I think you almost got to give with a knee injury like that when you tear your ACL, it takes a little while. It takes at least another year. So I don't really see Cohen just coming in and being what he was before. And I was already seeing a slowdown before he got hurt. Really, the move that I thought can potentially – it's a 6th-round pick, but I feel like Khalil Herbert would be more of an option here that would fit more into that Tariq Cohen role than Tariq Cohen will. I'm not saying he may not make the team. I understand that, but I think he just feels like he's going to be a good fit for this scheme. Kind of a one-cut guy with some burst that can catch the ball out of the backfield. I feel like he is the one that's going to end up eating into those carries a little bit for David Montgomery. But I just basically got David as a safe RB2 kind of running back. I'm not expecting anything better than that.
I'm going to get you guys out of here in just a second. Got a question coming in here from Ashley. What is Fields' floor ceiling? Is Deshaun Watson a fair comp? That's interesting. I'm sure you guys have heard a lot of comps. I hope he's a comp in good ways for Deshaun Watson.
No massages.
He was working out with him today. I don't know if you saw those clips coming out. It was Deshaun Watson and Justin Fields working out together today.
Jordan Love, I think, was down there too.
Yep.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
What do you think? You might have a good comp for him?
I will say that their draft, the way their draft played out is very similar, right? I mean, Deshaun Watson, a lot of the same thing. There's a guy that had big gains against big-time competition. Come draft time, everybody's coming up with every excuse not to draft him. And he ends up dropping, then proves everybody wrong. It had a very similar feel to this Justin Fields situation for this draft. I think that is a decent comp. I think that right now Fields probably reads the field better than what Watson did. But they're both guys that with strong arms, obviously can get out of the pocket and move around. So I think that's a fairly decent comp. Obviously, me, in my opinion, since he's been drafted by the Bears, I think he's going to be the greatest quarterback to ever live. So.
Okay, well, Steven, what would he have to do to be the greatest quarterback in Chicago Bears history?
4,000 touchdowns. The bar is not that high.
Play 1 year and he's already.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a team that has not had a touchdown passer for a season. A team that has not had a 4,000-yard passer ever.
That's amazing.
Oh my God, it's
I thought sure like Jay Cutler would have got there at some point, but that's amazing.
Got close.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
if he didn't get injured in 2015, he probably would have gotten there, but yeah, not the case. I mean, there's been a lot of Deshaun Watson comps. There's been a couple Dak Prescott comps out there as well over the course of draft time, and then I've even heard a couple Donovan McNabbs out there. But really, I mean, he's that strong arm passer that has the ability to take off and run with the ball, and just that stoic stature back in the pocket. And honestly, just overall as a pedigree, that's not something the Bears have had for a very long time, just in terms of how he carries himself and who he is athletically. I think that's the most exciting thing about Justin Fields heading into his rookie season is that the hype is there, the athleticism is there. Can it all translate onto the field and be the answer the Bears have been looking for over 100 years?
Oh my God, yeah, Sid Luckman.
Certainly knows how to play in big games, right? I mean, that's kind of he stared down the number 1 pick and looked like the best player on the field not that long ago.
Yep.
Dave, tell everybody, you're doing so many awesome things, dude. Tell everybody where they can find you, what you're working on, and just over the course of the rest of this quote unquote off season, how can people support what you're doing?
Yeah, the easiest thing is just to find me on Twitter at Dave Kluge. That's at Dave Kluge. It just takes too long to even plug everything that I'm doing right now. I'm doing like 10 shows a week. I'm hosting 4 every single week. I've got articles coming out a couple times a week. So just find me on Twitter and you'll see what I'm up to.
Roberto.
That's a busy man over there.
Yeah,
I'm not as busy, so hit me up on Twitter at rs_smooth. I'm not an Avi maker like Steven Johnson up there, Roto, but I do like taking Raleigh Fingers mustache and putting on anything I can. So I like photoshopping that. So if you need anything, have anything that you want Photoshop with Raleigh Fingers mustache, I'll take care of that for you.
Or with Matt Donnelly's mustache photoshopped on there. Roberto is also very good at that.
I don't even know if that's a mustache. I'm pretty sure he just like stapled a dead squirrel to his face.
I hope he's still watching.
The dingus filter.
Yeah. But seriously, like I mean this. Like Roberto is like, more people need to follow him. He's hilarious. Like he's smart. He knows what he's talking about. Like he's got a real life and like maybe isn't as active as some people, but like like get on there and interact with Roberto. You won't
have some fun. Yeah,
you won't regret it. Steven, how about you, man? How can people support what you're doing over the rest of this off season?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Steven with a PH_Roto. You can find my work at ShyCitySports.com and One Up Fantasy debuting later this month on Shy City Sports as well.
Very cool. Well, for these guys, for Dynasty League Football, look, just make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Like, just look down there. There's a button. Does it say subscribed or does it say subscribe? If you have not subscribed yet, hit that. Hit the thumbs up button, hit the notifications, all the things the cool kids do. Make sure you do that. And we got so many of these team previews still to come. We've got a lot of things that Addison is doing during the day as well. Dropping a video every single day in our Ask DLF show on Tuesday nights with Tyler Karp that we went 4 hours on the last few weeks, which is amazing and so long. Yeah, my voice is still recovering. So anyway, yeah. Appreciate you guys for coming in. Appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening. And we